In the UK, our neighbours often live too close to home.
Come and speak to me. You doing?
So it's no surprise 1 in 5 of us have been in an argument with next door. Coming up, a nuisance neighbour intimidates residents on a Dagenham estate.
The way he portrays himself and the way he acts makes me think that he is threatening.
There's a thief at large in an Anglesey village.
I opened the side of my wallet and it had gone.
And in Somerset, a dispute turns to menace.
Right in your line of sight is a man standing at the end of your garden.
He caused trouble for me, so why should I have to be a nice man today?
If it's peace and tranquility you're after, you'd think the rolling hills of Somerset would be the perfect location to set up home. Surrounded by farmland and country parks, the elegant properties in the market town of Yeovil were the only choice for one growing family.
We liked the house, we really liked the house. The place was Victorian and it was original. We loved that era.
9 years ago, when Sue and Guy DeRoper and their 4 children found their dream home, they were over the moon.
We just wanted to get in and sorted as quick as we possibly could. Just unpacked basically and went to bed.
But that first night in the new house, they didn't get the peaceful sleep they were hoping for.
I think it was during that night, and it was kind of a, what's going on? As the nights went on, it just became more apparent that, you know, there was a big chicken problem somewhere.
Although the DeRopers could hear chickens, at first they weren't sure where they were.
It's very difficult to find out where the source of it was coming from. But luckily, one of the neighbours sort of introduced herself. She took us into her house and showed us her back garden. It was then that we discovered who owned the chickens.
What was meant to be their dream home was now turning into a nightmare.
Got this lovely place that we're in, accommodating everyone, everyone's comfortable, but what have we done?
It was now clear to the DeRopers that their garden bordered a neighbour's yard that was overrun with chickens. That neighbour was Peter Studley, and his chickens were running wild throughout his backyard and across neighbouring gardens and alleys.
Well, I suppose when DeRopers moved in this house, I suppose there was 100 plus chickens and cockroaches.
69-year-old Somerset local, Mr. Studley, was already known in the town as something of a character.
Oh, I think Mr. Studley's got a bit of a bad boy reputation.
Who divided opinion among the residents.
But he's been absolutely fine with me.
Morning, Mark. How are you this morning?
Fine, thank you, mate.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Just a lot of people don't like him, and that's all there is to it.
So your normal, Pete?
Yes. Thank you. Getting thinner and thinner, Mark.
Always does though, doesn't it? No good news. However, knows Pete, you know, he's always ducking and diving, wheeling and dealing.
Thank you, Mark.
Cheers, mate.
I suppose I am in my own way a good neighbour because I don't get involved with them. You know, I let people do what they want to do and I'll do what I want to do. There ain't no problem there.
When Mr. Studley purchased the carpet shop and the flat above it in the town centre, he also gained a few chickens that had been left behind by the previous owner.
Somebody's moved out and left the chicken there. You know what I mean? But I always thought somebody were going to come back for them, but nobody come back for them. I grew up on a farm, a big farm when I was a kid. Animals were lovely. I liked it, like, you know what I mean? I really do. You appreciate what life is all about, you know what I mean?
Under Mr. Studley's nurturing wing, the army of chickens began to grow.
Used to come back with bags of bread and bags of corn, and I used to just chuck them on the floor. Chuck them on the floor. And they used to come and pick it. And they'd be all roundy, up on me lap everywhere. That's how tame they were.
The chickens may have been tame, but to the DeRopers next door, they were ruining their dream home.
Welcome to our little garden. This was completely out of bounds to everyone at the time of the chickens. It was absolutely a shocker when we first saw this. The whole of this area was just, it looked like a scrapyard with chickens on it.
It's a description Mr. Studley doesn't dispute.
It was not a garden. It was a waste dump. You couldn't do nothing. It was out of control, really, you know what I mean?
Not only did we have eggs dotted around, which you could see had been there for a long time, we also had carcasses dropped around, usually covered in maggots. Some of the chickens would be eating the carcasses.
I didn't leave dead carcasses about. I used to pick them up there and chuck them in a bin liner and chuck them out with a rubbish dust cart.
The smell that used to hit us from an egg cracking, and you knew it was a rotten egg, was absolutely atrocious. I have physically been in the garden before and an egg is cracked and I've had to run inside gagging.
And it wasn't just the stench from the rotting eggs and carcasses. There were other unwelcome animal intruders.
We've seen rats in this area and we've seen rats coming down our back alley going all the way round the back.
I got on all right with the rats. I mean, a rat ain't going to bite you unless you try to do something to him.
I don't think Studley cared about hygiene. I don't think Studley cared about the interference it was causing the neighbours. He was just being completely selfish about the whole matter.
The De Ropers' dispute with their neighbour was about to take a menacing turn.
I'm not being funny. This is my answer to that. Leave. Find somewhere else to live.
Coming up, loud music and attitude upset neighbours in Dagenham.
I got a letter from the council saying that I'm basically a music terrorist.
And in Anglesey, a friendly neighbour turns out to be anything but.
They advised me to ring the police. That was the start of all the problems.
For many householders, living in close quarters to neighbours is a fact of life. But for residents on a Dagenham estate, including one who asked not to be identified, it was totally unbearable.
You live in a commercial block of flats. They're not brilliantly made. They have quite thin walls.
Back in 2010, a particularly noisy neighbour would reveal just how thin the walls were.
It was severe bass. The bass was quite bad and it was horrendous music.
And in the opinion of some neighbours, it wasn't just the loud music that was the problem.
But the way he portrays himself and the way he acts makes me think that he is threatening. And that's why I've actually never gone round there. But many times I've thought of going up there and saying something, but then I think, if I go up there and he turns on me, how am I going to deal with that?
It turned out that the noise nuisance was a young rapper called Elvis Tarasenze, who once topped the charts in Kenya.
Situation messed up. Was mom's words early morning getting dressed up. I stretched out, flat broke, and guess what? Them feds nicked up my boy and said I'm next up. I've been here for what, almost 4 years now. I'm called Elvis because of my dad. He used to be a big fan of Elvis. He had all the wigs and the costumes and you know, the big old records and stuff.
But this Elvis turned his back on his dad's blue suede shoes in favour of more modern music.
I'm into R&B, rap, dancehall. I've been through ups and downs here and there, and obviously got in trouble with the police and stuff. And at the time, I used to, you know, walk around in gangs of groups. I had a community studio where I'd go there and make music. So I saw that studio as a way to make me better.
But for his neighbours, this rapper's love of making music wasn't doing much to improve their situation. Especially when he began making it at home.
Got myself a job and worked there for a few months, saved up a little bit of money, and I started buying my equipment. Obviously I needed the speakers and I needed the mixer to mix and normalize my beats and stuff. And yeah, I needed a microphone obviously to record my sound and stuff and mix it up.
Elvis was creating music and uploading it onto the internet in a bid to get discovered.
I've been through the ups and I've been through the struggle and I've been through a mad emotional roller coaster. I'll play my music around probably 6 till probably 11, around them times, because I know that's the times that I can't play music past 11 o'clock because it's written in black and white in my tenancy agreement. If I'm playing music then I have my music in my headphones and I'm either producing or just laying out some vocals, and that's it.
Although Elvis swears he didn't make noise after 11 p.m, his neighbour disagrees.
Sometimes it wouldn't start till 1 a.m, so you'd think, oh yeah, peace and quiet for one night. And then suddenly, when in bed, it would start and you'd be like, what?
She immediately complained to the council and the rapper received an official visit.
I had a knock on the door, and obviously there was this guy from the council. He said he was from the noise nuisance team, whatever they called. This was like 6 o'clock in the evening. I opened up the door and he must have said to me that he must have had a complaint from a neighbour that I was playing loud music. Obviously, I turned down the music at the time. And a few weeks after, probably 3-4 weeks later, I got a letter from the council saying that I had been causing a nuisance all through and I'm basically a music terrorist.
The neighbour had continued to complain to the council about the noise, but despite their letter, Elvis didn't appear to be taking them seriously.
He was one time outside. The music had stopped, so he was on his balcony. I actually heard, "Here, I will go a cappella," and he started rapping to himself and his friends.
It's something Elvis denies.
Rap with my mates on the balcony to annoy my neighbours. I mean, come on. I won't even go I might as well just go and do a show or something.
By now though, Elvis had become public enemy number 1 and would get another unwelcome visit.
I opened up the door and it was the guy from the council because he had his badge on.
It looked like the rapper was about to be unplugged. In Somerset, the DeRoper family were dealing with their own noisy neighbours.
Some people might think, well, you get used to it, but you don't.
But these noisemakers were of a feathered variety.
Every cockerel that crows are like fingernails down a blackboard.
A row was brewing over neighbour Peter Studley's 120 chickens running wild in the backyard next door to the DeRopers.
The thing is about chickens, cockerels and stuff like that, it's not constant, it's sporadic. Your body tends to put itself in a full sense of security and you relax, and then suddenly it's and you're like, there it goes again, and you can't get away from it.
The DeRopers' lives were becoming unbearable.
As far as your eyes could see in this whole area, there was nothing but chickens.
But despite the DeRopers' complaints that the chickens were making their lives a misery, their owner Peter Studley disagreed they were a nuisance.
No, I never had no difficulties sleeping with them. They never used to make no noise in the middle of the night anyway.
For the DeRopers though, the chickens were making every part of their home life a nightmare.
Well, the pressure it was putting on us is we actually felt like caged animals. And you looked out the window and there were some animals out there that had the free roam. So we were the ones that were being caged when it was actually the cockerels that should have been caged.
Living next door to over 100 chickens had become a hellish nightmare. But next door in his flat,
This is my bedroom in here.
their neighbour still didn't think there was an issue.
These suitcases all full up with clothes that I never chuck nothing away because I might need it one day. And this is my videos, mostly train videos, engines, steam engines. I'm very happy here. I've no worries and I'm happy.
Mr. Studley may have ignored their complaints to him about the chickens, but the DeRopers weren't prepared to give up on their dream home.
We decided that the house was lovely and we shouldn't be put off by an aggravating noise.
Believing that their neighbour wasn't properly looking after the chickens, the De Ropers reported them as being maltreated.
When we originally contacted the RSPCA, we were hoping that they'd see the state of the land over there and actually rehome them, give them to somebody in the country who was quite happy to look after all these chickens and cockerels and give them a proper life with proper food and proper facilities for a happy and healthy life. Not leave them in a fly tipping yard.
Unfortunately for the family, the authorities decided Mr. Studley hadn't been neglecting his chickens.
When the RSPC lady used to come, she said, oh, well, they were looked after. So, I mean, they had running water, they had plenty of food, you know, and plenty of room to run around on, you know what I mean? So.
At their wits' end, the De Ropers now tried a different attack and called the council about the constant bird noise. They were asked to record every cluck and crow the chickens were making.
The noise in this room was absolutely horrendous. The environmental health guys gave us a clicker. Every time the noise came along, you press the clicker and it recorded for a certain amount of time. The clicker, it seemed like it was going all night. It seemed like I was pressing it literally every second of the night. I can't remember the precise figure, but it just felt like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clicks all through that night.
At last, it seemed like the family had the evidence they needed for the council to give Mr. Studley a noise abatement order.
We never heard how many crows an hour we got with it.
They just said that it was enough.
Yeah, they didn't really
to warrant the noise abatement.
The De Ropers believed the order would end their nightmare, but the battle with Mr. Studley over the chickens wasn't finished.
This was the initial stages of the whole procedure, but it was completely ignored by Mr. Studley.
Nobody gave me this abatement order, I found it. Right? And I chucked it straight, looked at it and laughed and chucked it in the bin. A joke. I thought it was a joke.
At that point, you know, environmental health probably didn't know which way to turn. So rather than everything being sorted, it just went on and on and on.
With the official order falling on deaf ears, in the weeks that followed, the De Ropers would see their neighbours' defiance turn to hostility.
I wasn't going along with rubbish like that. I can't believe that there's such a thing. Neighbours should mind their own business. Indeed, they should.
In 2007, retired scientist Pamela Booth said goodbye to the hustle and bustle of a busy town in search of a quieter neighbourhood.
I really did need to move somewhere where I felt more comfortable, where I could enjoy the community.
She relocated to a picturesque village on the Isle of Anglesey, North Wales.
Isn't it friendly, the island?
Beautiful place. I wouldn't live anywhere else.
The people are
Don't tell
lovely.
anybody else, girl.
No.
They'll all want to come.
I know. When I first moved, I thought, really, this is going to be home. There was the freedom to move around. There was the freedom for my 5 dogs and my 9 cats. I love my animals. Can you tell?
Pamela's best friend Linda is a regular visitor.
Yeah, this is lovely, isn't it?
Oh, it's beautiful, Linda. She's always amazed that I can leave my keys in the door. She expressed concern at first, but now she got quite happy with it.
One day, the two ladies met Pamela's new neighbour outside her house.
I opened the door and there was a lady stood there. I didn't know who she was, and she said to me, she's I'm Pamela's neighbour. She pointed out to both of us that the car had a puncture.
Which presented us as being all women with a problem.
Delith Jones lives just 7 doors up from Pamela's house.
Because she offered to help us get the tyre off
Yes,
and get us
she
back
did.
on the road. We thought, oh, lovely, what a nice neighbour. That's really, really good.
She seemed really lovely. I thought she was a really nice person.
Having seemingly friendly neighbours she could count on was also important to Pamela as she suffered from bad health.
In about 2005, I was diagnosed with a very rare autoimmune illness. With the osteoarthritis that I have in my legs as well and the hips, it makes me very unstable because the medication I take affects my bones and muscles as well.
With her best friend Linda living 140 miles away, Pamela came to rely more and more on her new friend Delith.
She said, what type of jobs have you got piling up? And I said, well, I need some painting done outside on the patio. She painted the shed. I mean, it was really nice of Dallas. I really did think, you know, doing a job like this and just rolling the sleeves up, I had a really good friend.
In return, Pamela regularly welcomed her new friend into her home.
She told me really she was very cold because she couldn't afford the oil to put in her heating, and I said, well, you're very welcome to come and sit here, you know, with your knitting or what have you, or use the broadband connection. I really wanted to be a good friend, you know, and to help her. It doesn't hurt, does it, to help somebody every now and then?
But best friend Linda wasn't so sure about Pamela's helpful neighbour.
I was concerned when I found out that she'd been spending a lot of time down here. I was on end. When you said to me she'd no oil for her eating, she'd no eating on at all.
No.
And I actually said to you, do you feel used? And you actually said that, well, as far as I'm concerned, we're helping each other.
Yeah.
Stay warm here.
Yeah.
As their friendship grew, Pamela became more trusting of Delith.
She'd taken on board the fact that I'd leave the keys in the door. And I think she also realised if she called out, Pam, I'm here, I'm just going to use the broadband, is that all right? She just used, and I had no suspicions that she was doing anything else.
But in July 2013, Pamela made a worrying discovery.
So I came down the stairs to get my purse. I opened this side of my wallet where I keep my debit card, and it had gone. So I thought, well, don't panic, I'll go to the car in case it had just slipped out of my purse. I checked the front and then I checked behind the driver's seat just in case it had fallen through. When I came back and I rang the bank, they asked me what time I'd used it and when was the last time I'd used it, and I told them I'd used it on the Thursday, and they said, well, it had been used again on the Monday to make a withdrawal of £60 from Cangaffo Post Office. Well, I told them there was no way that could be me. They cancelled the debit card because obviously they didn't know where it was, and they advised me to ring the police. That was the start of all the problems.
Pamela reported the card had been stolen, but it was what happened next that really shocked her.
I received a phone call from the police.
Than Pamela expected, causing trouble in the neighbourhood.
I am not insulting you, I'm merely asking for the truth.
Coming up, in Somerset things take a disturbing twist.
I never put no threats on.
It was just insults.
Basically, yeah.
And in Dagenham, it's time to face the music.
I wasn't considering no one a nuisance, so I didn't really get what they were talking about.
Down in Somerset, trouble was afoot. The De Roper family had had enough of cocks crowing all night and feeling imprisoned by the health hazard outside. Their neighbour Peter Studley's passion for poultry had wrecked their new dream home. After they complained to the council, he was served with a noise abatement order.
I thought that, well, that's it. It's all over. Yeah, how wrong was I?
But Mr. Studley refused to abide by it.
Nothing but a bloody load of rubbish.
For the next 18 months, their neighbour and his chickens continued life as before. But for the De Ropers, the daily disturbances and lack of sleep was tearing the family apart.
It put a strain on our relationship. because it ended up being just a constant battle to try and make things right. It can put you in a very, very low mood, anxious, you know, to the point you feel that you want to give up.
As the dispute escalated, the De Ropers began to feel intimidated by Mr. Studley himself.
Mr. Studley would be looking from that window there, which you can't see now, it's overgrown. But it always felt very intimidating. He not only had the look over all of this land, but he could see right into our back garden to what we were doing.
You're sat in your living room watching your TV, and obviously my view is straight out of the back. And then all of a sudden, right in your line of sight, looking back in at you, is a man standing at the end of your garden. Bearing in mind the garden's, what, 15 feet long? It's quite intimidating.
Always let people know what you're about. Say, for instance, when you're down the garden, you know, just sort of have a look round and look through the window, and you see when they're out there, or he's behind the curtain. They cause trouble for me, basically. So why should I have to be a nice man today?
Unconcerned his actions might simply strengthen the De Ropers' case against him, Mr. Studley decided to reach out to his neighbours in his own special way.
We had a handwritten letter that was delivered through the door.
The gist of it was like, I'm keeping my eye on you or something, and if you want trouble, you've stirred up or you've gone to the wrong person or something. It was really quite general, wasn't it? It was just a general. Well, it wasn't a hello, welcome to the neighbourhood. I'm your neighbour. I'd like to introduce myself.
Please come round for a cup of coffee. It wasn't one of those.
No, it wasn't.
It was signed. It was P scribbled out, and then the chicken owner.
Guy was quite angry when he read the letter, and he didn't want to tell me because he knew that I'd been feeling a little bit threatened.
I did write a letter to the Ropers, but I never put no threats on it letter. Are you with me? I never put no threats on.
It was just insults.
Basically, yes.
Mr. Studley may have seen nothing wrong with his letter, but its consequences would be far-reaching. After relocating to a small rural village in North Wales,
Baby Jane! Baby, come on!
Pamela Booth had become good friends with her seemingly helpful neighbour, Delith Jones.
She painted the shed. I mean, it was really nice of Dallas. I really did think, you know, doing a job like this and just rolling the sleeves up, I had a really good friend.
But when Pamela discovered her bank card was missing and reported it to the police, her worst fears were confirmed.
I received a phone call from the police saying they'd arrested Delith and taken her to the police station, and they showed her footage of CCTV both inside and outside the post office at Llangafo. She was withdrawing the £60 and she was driving my car.
Learning it was Delith who had stolen her debit card left Pamela and her friend Linda astounded.
I mean, I was just shocked. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I couldn't believe it.
We didn't want to believe it, did we? We didn't want to believe that she'd taken your card and used it to withdraw money, and that would just, then it all just spiralled, didn't it, from there?
Pamela's trust had been betrayed, leaving her in a state of shock.
It just made me feel so totally numb. I've never ever felt like that.
And Pamela couldn't escape the fact that she was living on the same street as her betrayer Delith, who has declined to tell her side of the story.
I noticed many a time behind the blinds that she was looking out, and I thought, well, you know, if I'd done something like that, I wouldn't want to be looking at the person I'd done it to. You know, I thought that was wrong.
Worried that the £60 might not be the only money Delith had stolen from her, Pamela decided to check her bank statements.
I knew that some of these withdrawals definitely weren't mine. I cried, and that was the first time really I'd lost all the numbness that I'd had. And I thought, well, the best thing to tackle this is to go through them all write down all the information I needed, where it was taken out from and everything else, and the amounts. When I came to January and there was these 3 withdrawals, and then later on through the summer months there was this huge withdrawal of £180. I've never looked at anything so distressing in all my life.
Over a period of 10 months, Delith had stolen Pamela's bank card on 14 occasions, taking a total of £1,074 from Pamela's bank account, a significant amount of money for retired Pamela.
I just couldn't believe that somebody could be so clever and so deceptive. I just wish I'd never even said hello to her in passing in a friendly way. I wish it had nothing at all to do with her. No matter how hard a life you've got, you don't betray a friend. You never betray a friend.
Distraught at her treatment, and with winter's huge fuel bills on the horizon, the situation was looking desperate for Pamela.
Yes, my house had previously been warm, but it certainly wasn't going to be, over this winter, unless I could get some more money together.
In Dagenham, it was looking desperate too. Elvis was driving his neighbours crazy with his passion for music.
I've been through the ups and I've been through the struggle.
Can't even describe how loud it was.
Following complaints from his neighbours, Elvis had already had one visit from the council asking him to keep his music down. But they were soon back for more.
He said to me that he had someone complain about me playing loud music, and he said to me that he didn't find any nuisance at the time when he came. Then I even asked him, I was like, do you think I'm making loud music with the door open? You know what I'm saying? He was like, no. And he just left, and as soon as he left, I just closed my door and I just went back to my beat making, really.
Although the council officer couldn't find an issue, Elvis's neighbours definitely did.
Bass was a big problem, obviously, because it made your walls vibrate. But I could hear his music in every single room in my home. Even in the bath, I could still hear the bass and feel it when my head was under the water. So even that didn't block out the sound.
But the ever-passionate Elvis just didn't believe there was a problem.
These walls are really thick walls, so I don't see how music travels from here to the other side. I wouldn't say they'll vibrate the next room.
But his neighbour was adamant it was keeping her awake at night.
Sometimes it wouldn't start till 1 a.m, so you'd think, oh yeah, peace and quiet for one night. And then suddenly, when in bed, it would start and you'd be like, what? Mostly early hours of the morning. It was quite a lot of an evening, probably between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m.
Elvis denies the allegation though.
Would you ever start the music at 1 a.m?
Never.
And unrepentantly carried on.
I'm trying not to get stressed because the system is a mess.
But desperate to get some peace, his neighbours continued to complain to the council.
Have a little bit of respect for other people, that's what he needs. And obviously he doesn't.
The council received 82 complaints, and in January 2012, Elvis hit the big time with a noise abatement order demanding him to stop.
But the system is making it hard for us to leave, bro. I really didn't see the need to go to the council and start pointing fingers like they did to me. And it's a cold.
Indignant, the rapper carried on, and over the next 18 months, the council made 15 visits to Elvis's flat.
I opened this envelope, and what I found in it was a letter that told me that I had to go to court. So obviously I was a little bit pissed off because I was thinking, what am I going to court for?
For Elvis, it was time to face the music, and on the 13th of September 2013, he appeared in Havering Magistrates Court.
I just went to court with the truth, and the truth being I wasn't causing no one a nuisance, so I didn't really get what they were talking about.
He was given a 3-month conditional discharge for 3 breaches of a noise abatement order and fined £1,000.
I just left the courtroom and whatnot, and I signed this little piece of paper to say that I'm going to be paying that money back every 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah, man, that was that.
Elvis's music career had stalled, but for his neighbour, things were looking better.
Now he's stopped the music, I lead a much happier life. Now I can go to work, come home, relax and go to bed when I want.
But the rapper is determined not to be defeated and has set up a new studio at his brother's house a mile away.
You know, and just to come in here and still do my music as I always did.
Even though it might be quieter on the estate now, at least one of his neighbours feels that Elvis isn't the noise nuisance he was made out to be.
I'm next door to you. My room is obviously right next to your living rooms. I hear the music, I can hear things, but it doesn't bother me. From their point of view, I can extend it to a certain extent. I can understand why they would get angry with the noise. If you have a studio in the middle of a residential area, certain people will get upset. But if I had an issue, I would simply knock on his door, say, Elvis, it's a little bit loud, I've got to work in 2 hours, can you please turn it down a bit? I know for a fact he would say, not a problem, I'm sorry, and he would do that. But it's when certain people think that they have to take it to higher authorities, then that's when naturally you're going to feel upset and defensive. So I fully understand his plight.
Elvis is still maintaining his innocence.
I know I'm no angel, neither am I Satan.
But with a conviction already, he runs the risk of an even stiffer penalty in future.
It's like I say, this music is my addiction, you get me? I'm addicted to it. And this music is not going to stop ever, you get me?
Coming up, the Anglesey theft divides the community.
I understand you've been saying in the village that you have a lot of sympathy for her.
Yes, I have.
And it's the beginning of the end as Mr. Studley battles the courts.
No, don't worry too much of what they say or what the court dishes out to be.
On the picturesque island of Anglesey, North Wales, retired Pamela Booth had found out that her supposedly helpful neighbour had in fact been robbing her of her savings.
Oil is expensive, but every year I top up my oil tank. Obviously I was not going to be able to do that this year, you know. Yes, my house had previously been warm, but it certainly wasn't going to be, you know, over this winter, unless I could get some more money together.
On the 31st of October 2013, Delith pled guilty to 14 counts of fraud by false representation. She was given a 12-month community order and 100 hours of unpaid work.
She had to pay me back the full amount. It was decided at the court at that time that she would pay the money back at £5 a week. The thought that somebody can gain so much from taking so much from somebody and then get away with paying £5 a week, to me that is a slap on the wrist. And bearing in mind that I have an incurable life-threatening illness and it's going to take her over 4 years to pay this money back, well, I could be dead.
Pamela still lives only 7 doors away from Delith, but has yet to find out why her neighbour stole from her.
I think she's either hiding or not in.
What do you think she's doing?
I think she's hiding. I'm wondering what she is thinking about what she has done.
And although Pamela was the victim, it appears to have split opinion in the village where she lives.
I understand you've been saying in the village that you have a lot of sympathy for her.
Yes, I have.
Why? Would you like to explain?
She's an unfortunate lady.
You do? Why? What do you think to me as the victim? I mean...
I'm sorry for you as well.
But you haven't expressed that in the village. Well, I think if you're taking one side in the village...
Taking sides?
Well, it felt as if you were when people said you'd been into the shop.
Being very rude.
I'm not being rude at all.
Please don't insult me.
I am not insulting you. I'm merely asking for the truth. I aren't on your property. Well, obviously I'd known all along that I was never going to get the money back. It was only going to be a pittance every week. And I was really worried about how I was going to manage to fill my oil tank. And I had such a lot of bone and muscle pain with being cold. And then the phone call came.
After seeing a newspaper article on Pamela's troubles with her neighbour, a local couple decided to anonymously give £500 to help her through the winter months.
Could have danced in the street if I'd have been able to. I really could. Really, really restored my trust in people.
Although the couple's kindness revived her faith in Anglesey's community spirit, Pamela's less trusting than before.
Pamela now locks the door. She's changed the locks on the doors, and it's back to how it was really when we used to live down in West Yorkshire.
But there's one neighbour she'll never invite into her home again.
And she's lost such a lot. Not only have I lost a friend, but she has lost more than she'll ever know.
In Somerset, the De Roper family had moved into the home of their dreams, only for it to turn into 4 years of chicken hell.
It was hideous. It was absolutely hideous.
But the problem became more than just the chickens, when their owner, Peter Studley, made direct contact with his neighbours by writing them a letter.
The gist of it was like, I'm keeping my eye on you or something, and if you want trouble, you've stirred up or you've gone to the wrong person or something.
That was the final straw for the De Ropers, who reported Mr. Studley's behaviour to the South Somerset District Council. He was ordered to appear before a magistrate to find a solution to the dispute and the chicken problem. It looked like the De Ropers might get rid of their noisy neighbour.
Obviously at that point I kind of felt a little bit of relief because, you know, I knew at that point that it was you know, a matter of time now before it was going to be all over.
They're making up all this stuff, but the trouble is, they realise now that I don't worry too much of what they say or what the court dishes out to me. My sound advice from the De Ropers is to just leave me alone.
When the court date came, Mr. Studley didn't attend, and he was awarded an ASBO for him and his chickens in his absence.
He had to get rid of all animals and not cause any intimidation.
It looked like the De Ropers had achieved what they wanted, but the 120 chickens didn't leave without a fight.
As you can imagine, because the chickens are free roaming all in this area, it went on for months, and it was always the case that we knew that there was going to be one cockerel left.
The noisy hell continued as charities and animal lovers fought to catch Mr. Studley's chickens.
I said, I believe, I will celebrate when the last one is removed.
They're causing trouble for me because that's basically all they done. And for the poor old chicken I had to go. So, you know, as you get rid of an 100-odd chicken, it would have been better if it was got rid of they and kept the chickens. You know what I mean?
Finally, 6 weeks after being given the ASBO, all 120 chickens had been removed. The De Ropers' longed-for silence now reigned.
It was lovely to sort of have a full night's sleep. The area outside where they were, it's all full of birds and, you know, nature, and probably for the first time in a few years we're able to sort of go outside and drink tea and coffee in the morning when we get up in the sun in the garden, which is absolutely brilliant.
Nevertheless, a shadow continues to hang over the family's peaceful lives. 5 years after Mr. Studley's ASBO, who knows if life will change once again.
I believe the ASBO has ended now. I'm just waiting now for the chickens to reappear.
But Peter Studley is never that predictable.
The pigs are coming now. That's all I got to say about it. I got to have the pigs now.
Next time, a neighbourly dispute over money gets blood boiling in a Cotswold street.
It was like an elastic band snapping. Something had just made me very, very angry.
Things get nasty between two Bristol neighbours.
Every day I get a call from Collins, tell me he's going to slash my throat.
And menacing threats are in the air in Northampton.
His response was, well, you better hope I'm not evicted because I've got friends and they'll come after you.
Have you been the victim of a nightmare neighbour, or has your neighbour complained about your behaviour? If you'd like to tell us your story, go to channel5.com/nightmare neighbours. Next, it's a new one from The Mentalist.
In the UK, UK, the problem of nightmare neighbours has never been worse.
Oi, you were assaulting me!
I was shaking. I was absolutely terrified.
1 in 5 of us has been at war with next door.
Never forget that, scumbag.
Where flaring tempers can turn home life into a living hell.
We dread coming home.
Coming up, neighbours and best friends become sworn enemies.
I'm here again. On my own. The way for David to go out. He's always watching.
The police are called when a dispute becomes criminal.
You're causing me to feel harassed, distressed and alarmed.
And it's all-out war in the Cotswolds.
And he just went like that, and I just went...
In 2002, Steve and Eve Bedford moved to the east of Leeds with their 2 young children, Jason and Samantha.
I grew up over here and we just wanted to be near the friends and family.
Next door lived David and Janet Sheldon, who had been in the area for a number of years.
Janet and David introduced themselves, seemed like an okay couple. Over the years, we got to know them reasonably well, thought they were alright.
I think we made them a meal and a cup of tea and what have you, because you don't have anything going when you first moved in. They were alright.
The 2 families soon formed a firm friendship, and when the Sheldons renewed their wedding vows, they immediately thought of their next door neighbours.
I was asked to be David's best man.
We went up to Gretna Green with about 40 of us, didn't we? And had a weekend up there. We had a right good time.
Everything seemed fine.
We thought we were good friends. That's all I can say, and that's all I can say, we were good friends.
But 3 years after the wedding, it all changed. It started with the Bedford's daughter Sam, who was then 14.
My friend was round and my cousin was round, and I'd walked out my drive and we'd got to here where the Sheldon's drive is, and he was doing some work under his car, and all of a sudden he just come out with, "Oh, you're still as ugly as ever, aren't you, Sam?" And I just laughed it off because I thought, that's just David being David. And then my cousin said, "Oh, well, I must be just as ugly because I'm a cousin." And then from that, he'd said, basically, if I wasn't under this car, I'd kick your head in and get your dad down and I'll do him in as well. I think we were all scared because obviously it's a grown man and he's threatening 3 young girls.
Steve Bedford, Samantha's father, was too far away to hear the conversation, but he would soon know about it.
David came storming across the road, shouting and bawling, carrying on, absolutely completely lost the plot, shouting what he were going to do to her, that blonde girl. And initially we didn't know what we were talking about or who we was talking about. What are you on about, David? And her with the blonde hair, I'm going to cave her head in. I said to him 3 times, "David, what's the problem? What has she said? And I'll have a word." And all he could reply was, "I don't know."
This conversation was overheard by a neighbour who backs up Steve Bedford's version. But David Sheldon recalls the events differently.
The cousin was making comments about, racist comments to be honest with you, about my family and me. I'm pretty dark myself, like, and I'd just come back from Cyprus again, and I saw quite dark. Anyway, they went off laughing and giggling, and I went over and then talked to Steve about it. I said, "Look, Steve, have a word with her. It's not nice, that sort of thing."
Samantha Bedford denies that any racist comments were made by herself or her cousin.
I'm not a violent person, mate. I don't have to be. As it's been said, I am a black belt at martial arts. I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to go around threatening people. It's not my way.
The friendship was over, but soon afterwards, when the Sheldons went on holiday, they came back to a nasty surprise.
And for some reason, there was a massive great chunk cut out of our edge at the front. So we went round and just asked, what's this all about? And all we got was, we can't see anything wrong.
Don't know what you're
She was laughing her head off with Eve.
Yeah.
Eve Bedford had a different story. She claims that David Sheldon became violent and threatening.
He blew into a rage. He started swearing,
and blinding at me. Then all of a sudden he came right into my face, lifted both his hands to either side of my head, pulsating his fists, and he said, "I'm going to cave your skull in." I've never been so scared in my life.
Anyway, next thing, police came.
Accusing me of assaulting Eve on it.
Yeah.
But when the police arrived, there were two versions to the story, and according to the Sheldons, it was Eve Bedford that was throwing the punches at Janet.
We explained what was going on, and Janet showed all bruises that she'd got where Eve was physically assaulted her.
I had bruises where she grabbed hold of my arm, and when she closed the gate, the elbow got cut. And they asked me if I wanted to take it any further. To be honest, I wish I had done.
Yes, it was assault, wasn't it?
Eve Bedford denies these allegations, but from this moment on, it was all-out war for the once best friends.
Oh, wait! Yeah, just go home. Just go home.
But things were about to get worse.
You couldn't see my backyard for pieces of trees. He'd actually attacked our trees.
A Cumbrian builder declares war on a former mayor.
Basically, I was trying to be a decent neighbour, and I got kicked in the teeth at the end of it.
And a budgie breeder gets more than he bargained for.
And then he just walked up to me like that. It scared me a bit, because I thought he was going to come for me.
Near the market town of Chippenham in the Cotswolds lives Phil Rice in the ground floor flat of a two-storey council block.
They're really, really good down here. You know, if we do have issues, and we say minor issues, it's forgotten about the next day or in the next few days, you know, and then we just get on like one big family.
Phil's an exotic bird enthusiast and shares his flat with a treasured collection of canaries and budgies.
That's 5 baby budgies in there. You know, if I was to sell them private, I could get probably between £10 and £20 a bird for them all, depending on their quality. It's a good hobby.
He'd lived here for more than 3 years, when in 2007 a new neighbour moved into the block next door.
He come out of there, the entrance there to the 3 flats here, and he basically introduced himself as saying words along the lines, "Hi, I'm Bob, pleased to meet you." And the first initial meeting, thought he was quite a decent neighbour.
And within weeks of moving in, Keep Fit enthusiast Bob Williamson made an early attempt at bonding with Phil when he was having tea in his flat one day with friends.
There was like a knock at the window, like that, and it was Mr. Williamson, and he was coming out like saying, "Oh, you lot ought to come circuit training, you lot ought to weight training, and this, that, and the other, and salsa dancing."
But Phil wasn't impressed with Bob.
The salsa dancing isn't for me, not my type of thing. At the start off, we thought he was trying to be friendly, but when he kept doing it, we were thinking along the lines, "Oh, he's annoying."
Bob denies this event ever took place, but although he lives in a separate building to Phil, the two blocks share a communal yard. And Phil's habit of bringing his noisy birds out there didn't go down well with Bob.
Bob was complaining about the noise level they were making, but, you know, for hell's sake, they're birds, they're going to make noise, you know. It's not like they're cockerels. It's ludicrous. I've never heard anything like it, to be quite honest with you.
There were growing tensions between the neighbours, but one summer afternoon, this was to go up a level when Phil and his friends were out in the communal yard having a party.
I was walking from the shop with ciders and burgers and sausages where we were having a barbecue out the back. We got to roughly around about this point then. Robert was on this driveway and he was fiddling about with stuff in his van, and then he seen me where I am now at this point, and he shouted, "When you're going to turn that noise down, when you're going to stop," and all this sort of business. Got his hands in his pocket like that. He said, "I got to put my 5-year-old son to bed," he said, in a minute, and this was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then with that, he got his hand in his pocket and he threw the keys like that, and then he just walked up to me like that. So he's like trying to make himself big. It scared me a bit because I thought he was going to come for me. I honestly, genuinely thought he was going to come for me and lay his hands on me or assault me or whatever.
According to Phil, Bob's complaint was that the music in the courtyard was too loud.
The volume, I would say, was at a reasonable level, and we turned it down at a reasonable time and stopped playing the music at a reasonable time.
Phil called the police.
It was left that the police had just basically warned him of his conduct in the street for public order.
Bob denies this took place.
I walked off to the back garden there, the back communal yard there, and carried on regardless, drinking cider and having a few burgers.
But this was just the beginning of the Battle of the Neighbours. In Leeds, the Bedford family had fallen out with their former best friends and neighbours, the Sheldons. Both families were now at war after a row between Steve Sheldon and the Bedfords' 14-year-old daughter Sam, and things weren't getting any better.
I'd come out of my house and then I'd hear the car engine turn on. And obviously they'd speed up a bit and go past me with a grin and waving and stuff like that. And then I'd come to this bus stop, and usually my friend would be here waiting as well. Janet would normally drive past really slowly, giving it all the big grins and the smiling and the waving, as if to say, like, we're getting away with it, and trying to intimidate me and obviously upset me or make me feel angry.
But once again, the Sheldons have a different version of the story.
Janet had been complaining to me that she was frightened to go to work on a morning because Samantha and a friend were terrorising her from the bus stop. Yeah. Am I right? Shouting abuse at her and gestures and all sorts.
David Sheldon says that one morning he followed his wife to work, hoping to catch Samantha Bedford in the act.
Went down, I turned right at the end, and I'm coming along, and I saw it for myself.
Yeah.
They were giving her loads of abuse from the bus stop.
But Samantha recalls things differently.
He'd slowed right down and opened his car door, and he was shouting, "Come here, I'm going to kick your head in," waving his hands about at me, just trying to basically intimidate me. I was terrified. Absolutely terrified.
The police were called, but no further action was taken by them. But according to the Bedfords, the Sheldons had other ways to antagonise them.
They now have some sort of a bird noise tweeting away in the background all the time in the garden.
I think you'll find these are them, the front pound shop. We have about 3 or 4 out garden. We like bird song, and when these start up, they set the other birds going. What's wrong with bird singing?
Feeling intimidated, the Bedfords put up CCTV, and one evening it caught something alarming. Once again, it was their daughter Sam who was at the centre of the row.
It was a really hot summer's night, and I was like asleep here, and it got to like early hours in the morning, and they'd come back, and his wife was stood next to him, shining a torch in my bedroom window. And then they were both stood there saying, "Get out of bed, I just want to kill you all," and he just kept repeating what he was saying. I was terrified because I was only like young at the time. Sorry.
But the Sheldons claim they weren't even home that weekend, and they have the paperwork to prove it.
We went to be Saturday, Sunday, and we came back on holiday Monday.
Early on the Monday.
When they did get home, this time they were in for a nasty surprise.
You couldn't see my back garden for pieces of trees. He'd actually attacked our trees.
The Sheldons claim Mr. Bedford had cut their trees and entered their property to do so.
He lifted the panel up.
And there's a stick.
Whilst the Bedfords were well within their rights to cut back the overhanging branches, it is illegal to enter another person's property without permission. Neither family can prove exactly what happened that weekend, but what is clear is that the neighbours' war continued.
Got any next door neighbours now? This man is not a problem, is it?
Look with you, why are you
down in every clock.
On the outskirts of Carlisle live builder Phil and his wife Vicky Cochran. They moved to this bungalow 10 years ago and have fitted in well with the predominantly retired community.
I've done all kinds of things for a lot of people on the street, quite a few. I've done extensions, I've done boilers.
You do out for anybody on here, and especially the old people. You know, it's been to move the snow and everything when it's snowing on the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning off the drive so they can get out. It's too soft, and I'm sick of telling him that.
The area, however, did have one recurring problem.
The houses are very nice, but the full street has a big issue, and it's all to do with water. So when it rains, because the soil is only about 10 inches deep, everything else is clear. So I've done drainage and all that at my own property, as well as doing it at other people's properties in the street.
A few years later, Mrs. Geddes, a former mayor of Carlisle, and her husband William moved into the bungalow across the road.
You know, we were friendly neighbours, and I speak to everybody on the street.
A few years after moving in, Mrs. Geddes asked Phil to do some work on her house.
And Mrs. Geddes pestered the life out of me every time I came home from work to see if I would do the same job at her house, because she had the same damp issues. The original quotation that I gave her for the £1,700 was from the right-hand side of the house along the front. Then she asked me to do right down into the back garden because that used to flood. So I agreed, it's not a problem. I said, yeah, while we're here, we might as well do it. So we did. I completed the job, gave her the bill, and that's when it all started.
Phil's initial quote for Mrs. Geddes of £1,700 had grown because of the extra work she'd asked for to over £3,000.
She said she couldn't afford to pay all that money. So I subsequently said, well, give us it here because I'll go and sort it out, I'll doctor it a little bit.
Phil knocked £750 off the bill, but Mrs. Geddes allegedly said she still couldn't afford it.
I said, well, I can't really knock any more money off, Jackie, because it's actually cost me money now.
It was important to get the money because we paid, you know, the materials, we paid the wages for the lads that done the job. So, you know, we needed that money back.
A few months later, Phil reissued the invoice. With interest added and discounts removed, it now came to over £4,000.
Now she needs to pay up. Obviously, if she doesn't pay, then I'm considering legal action.
But once again, the invoice remained unpaid.
It's not good. You take people on trust, you know, and especially your neighbour. If somebody says they're not going to pay, I'm just disheartened by it.
Phil decided to make one last attempt to recover his money by sending his business partner, Brian Ridley, to talk to Mrs. Geddes and record the conversation for him.
I was waiting for my business partner to come back out of the house, Mrs. Geddes' house, to see if he's actually got the payment from her. They were in there, I think, about 45 minutes.
Vincent, I pick a check up. The works it was carried out.
Right, well,
7665.
you might be doing that, but that didn't solve the problem. And that invoice is false.
How comes?
Because it was agreed that the cost would be 1,600.
He just says, we've got no chance of getting the money, and she says she's not happy. I said, not happy with what? She says, not happy with the job. So I said, well, why is it taking her nearly 6 months to tell you that she's not happy with the job? She lives right opposite.
He's got a track record.
Right.
Trading standards have a track record.
Right.
I passed the file to trading standards.
Right.
She said that she'd reported me to trading standards because it was still damp under her bedroom floor. There was nothing wrong with the job. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. If there was a problem with it, why didn't she say at the time when it was getting done?
But that wasn't the only surprise for the Cochrans. Mrs. Geddes also claimed that she had tried to pay the bill.
I tried to pay him 3 times.
Right.
As soon as the work was finished, I went over with the cash.
Yeah.
But I said I wanted something in writing. I wasn't going to hand over £1,600 in cash without getting something for it. Oh, I'm too busy, aren't I?
That's a lie. There's no way she's been to my house to pay me 3 times and we're too busy to take a payment. It never happened. She didn't come over. She was lying.
We just want to get what we're owed. Yeah. We just want to get what we're owed. That's it.
But the Cochrans were about to get much more than that.
You're causing me to feel harassed, distressed and alarmed.
Coming up, things get more serious in Leeds.
For the next 12 hours I was locked up in custody.
And neighbours come to blows in Chippenham.
No, I just went whack like that, and hard as I could, I headbutted him.
In Carlisle, Phil Cochran had fallen out with his neighbour and former mayor Mrs Geddes after she had failed to pay his invoice of over £4,000.
I've never had any complaints from anybody about any of the jobs I've ever done for them. Everything is done to a high-class standard.
The Cochrans were left with no choice but to instruct a solicitor, but rather than a cheque turning up, the police did.
Sometime in January we got a visit from the police, didn't we? Came to my house and said she'd had a complaint from the neighbour across the road.
I said, your lights are shining in a window when you're setting off on a morning.
And I've said, so if her house is opposite mine, which it has been for the last 8 years that she's lived there, she's never had a complaint before.
The police left happy, but a few months later, at 4:30am,
report of lights being shone into a neighbour's window.
I was in bed and I heard knocking at the window, so I woke up and I looked out the blinds and I could see the police like walking around Phil's van.
Lights of a vehicle opposite, full beam towards the house.
Open the door and there's 2 police officers outside.
Your lights shining directly into their property.
I've just been out to check the lights. They were on about me headlights shining over to Jackie Geddes' house. I said, well, I've just checked my van and my van's obviously running. He said he was on about the main beam. I said, well, it wasn't intentional because I didn't know that the main beam was on.
And it's causing these people harassment?
If she's making a complaint, that's the harassment bit. She's the one harassing me.
Phil claims he tests his high beam every morning, and it was this that Mrs Geddes had reported as harassment.
Well, because I've had previous damage and that to my vehicle, and it's company practice as well. I mean, you've got to check your vehicle, you've got to make sure it's roadworthy on a morning. When the van started, the lights come on automatically, so the van lights would have been on, yes, because the vehicle was still running. I never had the lights on deliberately at all.
Not long after, the Cochrans received a visit from Mrs Geddes' husband.
So I said to Phil, I says, Will Geddes is at the door. So Phil's like, I says, what's he after? I says, I don't know. So anyways, I went to the door and I answered it. I says, yeah. I says, what are you after? He says, I've come for the uke back. This was a ukulele that I'd given my husband about 1.5 years before. It's just a little £10 thing, practice thing. So I just looked at him. I said, have you got my cheque? He looked at me, he says, no, I don't think so. I says, what are you after? He says, Phil.
I asked him to leave my property 5 times. But while I was asking him to leave, he's then verbally assaulting me. I says, I'm going to tell you now, if you don't leave my property, I said, I'm quite within my rights to use reasonable force to throw you off my property. And then I shut the door, you see.
Phil reported the incident to the police, but their advice was to simply return the ukulele. Phil refused. He claims he was told that a police officer would call to see him in the next few days.
I was just about to put Phil's tea on. The doorbell went and it was the police.
I thought they'd actually come about the ukulele incident. They said that they've come to arrest me for harassment. I said, it's got nothing at all to do with harassment. I said, it's all because of the money she owes me.
I was gobsmacked at this.
Phil was arrested for harassment and kept overnight.
Talking to go with the officer, just ask you questions, you don't have to answer them.
The next morning he was charged with harassment and granted bail. A date was set for trial.
We're looking at the CCTV footage, obviously sent to the police by Mrs Geddes, of me coming out to my vehicle. That's me activating the key fob where my lights actually flash, and I'm at the side of the van, so now I'm actually getting in the van. It shows me started my van, going around doing my vehicle inspections now. Coming around the passenger side, along through past the headlights. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, Mrs. Geddes actually sleeps in this part of the house, where you physically can't see any daylight or van lights shine into our bedroom. There's never once been over. I mean, a normal neighbour would have said, you know, sorry, but your van lights are waking me up in the morning, could you knock the lights off? Nobody's ever said anything to me about lights. It's only when the police came knocking at my door saying that I'm harassing this lady with my lights. If I purposely position my van to make my lights shine in her bedroom window, purposely, explain to me how that gets me paid quicker. How does that get me paid quicker?
In Leeds, once best friends and now sworn enemies, the Bedfords and the Sheldons, were at war. Both sides thought they were in the right.
Came to the window and could see very clearly that somebody was there putting bricks on top of the dividing pillar. The problem I had was he was building it on my property. So I went out and told him to stop. He built the pillar from here, 2 bricks wide, all the way up at an angle to avoid the capping stone at the top, and took it to about this height.
They were all right for a few months, and then we got a letter from him stating that if we didn't remove the pillars, he'd do it.
And that's exactly what the Bedfords did. A panicked Mrs. Sheldon called the police whilst filming the Bedfords.
And he's just dumping it at the front. That's right. Oh God, I'm shaking like a bloody leaf here. It's continuous.
You can tell by my voice. I'll shake no. Because I'm here again. On my own.
They seem to delight in terrorising Janet when she's on her own. The whole family.
I'm always here on my own when they start doing things. They wait for David to go out. He's always watching.
The police arrived and Samantha and her brother Jason were in for a shock.
I was fog marched down the street by the police officers. In the meantime, they also made accusations that my sister was involved in it.
There's nothing that I regret doing because I've not done anything. I got arrested for knocking down a wall that he'd built on our property.
And that was it for the next 12 hours. I was locked up in custody.
Jason and Samantha Bedford each received a harassment warning for their part in the damage to the brick pillar. The Bedfords and the Sheldons went to court over the boundary dispute. The trial was adjourned for a period of 12 months, and all parties were given an undertaking not to harass, assault or threaten. But this was far from the end of the war.
I was watering this side of the privet, so in no way am I squirting it into their garden. Then he briefly shoots out with a cup of freshly boiled water, as far as I'm concerned, and threw it over the privet at me. Clearly stunned me.
With no marks on.
But when the police went, they want a mark on him. Now I've scalded myself with a cup of tea, and it took 3 years to get rid of scald.
My automatic reaction is to lift my hand up and squirt him. The police say I antagonised him, which is absolutely ridiculous, and the CCTV proves it.
In Chippenham, the noise of Phil Rice's budgies was the start of problems with his neighbour Bob, and the two had almost come to blows in the street over a noisy party in the communal yard.
I've been worried about basically what his next move would do. You just don't know, he's so unpredictable.
This communal yard continued to be the main battleground. While Phil's side of the yard contains a discarded sofa, Bob's is well kept, but Phil kept placing his bird table on the border of the two.
This is a bird table. It was put there for us to enjoy the sight, so some wild birds possibly coming in here. What we get then, the bird table is being moved. It was moved over from that point there where I'm just lifting it from to there. I put it back there, and then it had come sort of like more into the corner here, you know, that sort of business. Why doesn't the guy leave Ever's stuff alone? We don't go touching his stuff. We daren't touch his stuff because he'd be the first person to jump up and down on the spot.
Despite having no proof, Phil is convinced it was Bob. But it wasn't just the bird table that was causing friction in the yard.
He accused me of purposely chucking the pegs on the floor. But what would I want to go and do that for? That's just being petty. Being real petty. In the meantime, he's just gone, put my washing on the floor. It could only be him. It could only be him because nobody else here would have done something like that.
This time, he called the housing association to complain about Bob. Keen to keep the peace, the association arranged a meeting for the two men in a neutral location.
We waited in a room upstairs here in this building for over half an hour or a roundabout, and there's no sight or sound of him. He never turned up, and I think he's wasted everybody's time. He said he forgot what time it was, but he knew.
Following the aborted mediation meeting, Phil claims that Bob continued to harass him.
When he'd walk by the window, he'd like like that, laughing as though, well, you were fools to go up there, you know, but he was the one who wanted to do it. Why didn't he turn up? And then he'd keep doing that every time he walked past the window. He would just like like that sort of thing.
And within months, Bob was back to his old tricks.
I was in here cooking one day, as you do, and the phone went, so I picked the phone up. Hello, and he said, you better get outside because Bob's out there. He was on the phone like this. He said, you better get outside because Bob's out there sweeping up, and you got all your whitewashing out there and there's dust going everywhere, and it might have gone on the washing. I come out of that door there, quite a rate of knots, if you like. I walked through the washing like this, and then I noticed like dirty black marks on there. This actual top was out there then, and it had like black marks there. It's like somebody had gone like that on it, you know. I took them in, and then I had to wash them again.
Bob admits to sweeping in the yard, as no one else would do it, but Phil was convinced he had ruined his washing and decided to get his own back.
Basically, I put something on my friend's social networking page. He lived at the time directly above Bob. I said to my friend, I said, do us a favour. I said, chuck some water bombs and some acid bombs out of your bedroom window on top of Bob's van. And of course, Bob was friends with my friend on Facebook, and he seen it. And then he's obviously gone and printed it off and took it to the police. The police wrapped my knuckles about it, gave me a good telling off. You know, you shouldn't go putting stuff like that on social networking sites, you know, they're dangerous things. I hold my hand up and I say, yeah, it's a mistake, you know, it was the wrong thing to do.
But Phil's joke would have serious consequences. Bob printed out screenshots of the posting.
And he put them from leading from his ground floor all the way up, bang, 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 right up, near enough to my friend's front door. I then rang the police. The police had instructed me to take a quick snap on my phone just in case he pulled them all down and said, oh, no, I didn't do that, you know, in case he denied it, basically. And I was just about ready to hit the button, and he come running out the door like that, and then I'm like, whipped the phone back into my pocket, and then he's gone up to the wall, whips one off the wall, rips another one off the wall, and he goes, yeah, that's for you, and he just went like that. And then he put his hand on my shoulder. I then said to him, get off me, Bob, get off me. And I just went whack like that, and hard as I could, I headbutted him. And then he got my head into a headlock, went like that into my face, boom, 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 like that. You know, giving it the left hook or whatever into my face.
Following the fight, the police were called. and attempted to broker a peace deal between the warring neighbours.
3 or 4 days later, one of the local community support police officers came out. I had to sign a form to stay away from him, and he had to sign a form to stay away from me. But it wasn't like an harassment order or anything like that.
The Housing Association considered the dispute to be ongoing, and the police continue to keep watch. It's been several months since the fight, and for the moment, peace reigns in Chippenham.
From time to time, I do walk out in the garden, you know, to see if he's touched any of my property or fiddled about my washing. He may erupt, you know, he may not. He's like a volcano.
But for now, the only noise to be heard in the communal yard is the chirping from Phil's budgies. Coming up, the Bedfords and the Sheldons come to blows.
I just managed to squeeze out of the way, otherwise he'd have killed me.
And the Cochrans fight back.
You're causing me to feel harassed, distressed and alarmed.
In Leeds, the argument between former friends, the Bedfords and the Sheldons, was about to spill out onto the streets.
As I turned into Allsop Road, I saw David. As usual, he stuck his fingers up, shaking his fist. I returned the 2 fingers and pulled into the bank.
So I pulled into the car park, and lo and behold, the Stephen sat behind the bank.
I heard a screech of brakes, tyres skidding, and David had jumped out of his car at the side of me, ran over and was literally punching at the driver's door window, trying to break the glass. I'm gonna effing kill you. And
David Sheldon claimed he approached Steve Bedford to bury the hatchet, but things went horribly wrong.
I tried to reverse the car to back off away from him.
I don't know if he knew what he was doing, but I was actually nearly pinned between the 2 vehicles. I just managed to squeeze out of the way, otherwise he'd have killed me. He'd have had me between the 2 cars and been crushed.
And he wasn't wrong.
It's gone through my mind since that perhaps the best option would have been to put my foot down when he was hanging over the front of the car trying to get away from him, and just driven straight into the back of the bank wall.
Over the last 2 years, Steve and his family had been to court 4 times over the boundary dispute with next door, but now he was determined to get David prosecuted for assault.
I felt I had no option at this point because the aggression was out of this world. I was seriously concerned and had been for a number of years.
But before long, the court case came to an abrupt halt.
I had to end my court action because of serious health problems.
Well, what he didn't realise is he's got all our costs to pay. About $7,500.
I have no money left. They've taken all my money already. It's cost us probably in excess of £30,000 now. And I just don't know where to turn.
The war with their next door neighbours has taken its toll on the rest of the family.
It's just traumatised me. It's traumatised us all as a family.
And for Samantha, it was a life changer.
When I became 16, I got a job so that I could move out. If all this hadn't have happened, I would definitely still be here, but I sort of want to protect my dad.
Even now, we're just gutted, devastated by it, really.
I think you should come round here, have a beer and forget about it all. I mean, I'll write it all off. It's craziness. We were best of mates.
Phil and Vicky Cochran had fallen out with their neighbour, the former mayor, Mrs. Geddes, after she failed to pay Phil for some building work. Mrs. Geddes claimed that Phil was harassing her by shining his van lights in her bedroom window, and he'd been arrested and released on bail.
But I'm literally not guilty of any crime because I've never committed a crime or intentionally shone any headlights at our property.
But the court didn't agree. He was sentenced to 180 hours community service and ordered to pay £650 court costs and £350 in compensation to Mrs. Geddes.
And she was wanting £1,150 something compensation for her, what was it, reflexology?
Yeah, reflexology.
Cranial therapy.
Was an osteopath as well.
Oh yeah, osteopath visits, counselling.
Because she can't remember numbers, she can't remember
Dates.
words, and she can't put sentences together. But they're all to do with my lights, you see.
I have never heard anything as stupid in my life. It was a 2-day trial for a set of headlights. That's the top and bottom of it.
3 months after the court case, where Phil was found guilty of harassment and served with a restraining order, the police arrived again.
Mr. Cochrane,
Is he here?
can we come in and have a word with you?
No.
We need to speak to him, alright?
Well, I don't have to open my door.
Well, you do, because we're going to arrest him for an offence.
What's the offence?
Well, we'll tell you when we come in and
No, just tell me what the offence is.
A breach of your restraining order.
In what respect?
In that you've breached it, the wording of it says you're not to shine your lights in the house, and
So where have I shone my lights in the house?
We've got evidence to suggest you have.
No, you haven't.
Right.
I've never shone my lights. So when did I shine my lights in the house?
We'll tell you in an interview. All right?
No, let me just tell you what it says in that order. It says I must not put my full beam on shining over to her house. So you'd be better leaving, because you're causing me to feel harassed, distressed and alarmed.
Doesn't matter what you say, we have to come and arrest you now. Right, are you coming with us, Phil, or not?
Yeah, he's getting his pants.
Yeah, well,
Okay, right.
I'll tell you what it is.
Can I get myself dressed like?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
The police decided to take no further action, and the Cochranes are still pursuing Mrs. Geddes through the small claims court. Mrs. Geddes has been asked about the dispute and chose not to respond.
He's not a cowboy builder. He knows exactly what he's doing. She just doesn't want to pay. It's as simple as that.
We won't be moving from this house. If she can't accept that, then she'd be better moving, wouldn't she?
Since filming finished, Mr. Cochrane has been arrested again on suspicion of breaching his restraining order. No further action is being taken at this time, but the restraining order still stands, and Mrs. Geddes is still yet to pay her bill. Next time, feuding neighbours caught on camera.
He was saying, I'm going to do you, I'm going to hammer you, and you're dead.
Life in a Scottish beauty spot turns ugly.
They just changed their whole life. For the last few months I didn't even want to speak to anyone.
It's a matter of time till he drops the bucket and comes at me with a hammer.
And not everything in this garden is rosy.
And all of a sudden he's at me like that.
Taking a closer look at the benefit culture tomorrow night at 8 on Channel 5 with Benefit Brits by the Sea. More money worries next too, and the team are nervous about a doorstep encounter with a suspected gangster. The new series Can't Pay will take it away.